Hey Weirdos, welcome back to The Weird Canadian. Today, we're joined by Michael Bach, a leading expert in diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility. As founder of the Canadian Centre of Diversity and Inclusion and Pride at Work Canada, Michael has held key roles at KPMG and is recognized internationally for his work. He is a Cornell certified diversity professional and has received numerous awards, including being named one of the most influential DE&I leaders by CIO Views magazine in 2023. Michael is also a best-selling author with his books Birds of All Feathers and Alphabet Soup. With nearly 20 years' experience, Michael has made significant impacts in fostering inclusive workspaces. And I had him come in today because diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility is a great fundamental idea. We don't think about that enough. We need to talk about it. We need to establish it in things to make society better. So, like, subscribe, and comment if you'd like on the channel. It helps. Thank you very much. Take it away.
My name is Michael Bach. My pronouns are he, him. I am a speaker, author, and thought leader in inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And I've been in this field for 20 years.
Being in this field, what do you think is the biggest misunderstood aspect of it?
Oh, easy. That focus on inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility is the antithesis of merit. That somehow when we hire a person of color or a woman or a queer person, that means they don't have the skills, that we had to lower our standards in order to meet that objective. And that is the opposite of what it means. The entire focus on inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility is about merit, is about removing bias, removing privilege from the opportunity. I always tell the story of the infamous symphonies. So up until the 1970s, symphonies were notoriously male-dominated. And in an attempt to remove bias from the hiring process in symphonies, they started having people audition behind screens. And so the only thing that mattered there was the merit, was the work product, which is the music. And the number of women and people of color in symphonies went through the roof. And to this day, symphonies audition behind screens so that they remove the bias from the situation. Inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility is absolutely about merit. People really care about representation and addressing issues of marginalization, all really important issues, and I get that. People do things that they think are supportive, but are actually counter to what we're trying to achieve.
That's a very politicized aspect of our election right now. And being on the outside of Canada, do you have any message or anything to relay to Canadians that might make a difference or might change somebody's mind and just keep them open to their ideas?
Oh, yeah, that's a complicated question, isn't it, Cody? So, yes, I am a Canadian, very proud. I wore red today specifically, but I have forsaken my homeland and am living in the United States. Now, in my defense, I just did it for the warmth. As a Canadian not living in Canada, I never thought he was going to win again. I've been very proud seeing the reaction to the whole 51st state comment, watching the conversation around inclusion and diversity in Canada, that a lot of Canadians are standing up and saying, no, this is a good thing and we know what we're doing. Thanks very much. We should be very proud of that. I don't love getting into politics because I think people vote for a variety of different reasons, and I'm politically agnostic. What I would say is a lot of times people vote out of habit, and what we're seeing in the United States is a whole lot of people regretting their votes because they voted based on one issue or they voted out of habit. I think this election is a challenging one for Canada.
It's like Canadians don't want to fight, Americans don't want to fight. It's literally just our leaders that are feeding the flames that are going on.
Yeah, they've ended up in this global pissing contest, which the rest of us are like, just calm down. I have the utmost respect for Americans. I live amongst Americans. I'm married to an American. There's nothing wrong with being Americans. Where I take issue is this bizarre notion from the current administration that they should dominate the world. Like, have we not learned a few things from colonization? Bizarre approach. And coming to take over Canada and Greenland, it infringes on our country's sovereignty. And that is a significant problem.
How should we address these changes? Like, how should companies go forward addressing the LGBTQ communities, building companies? Like, I'm just starting to grow. If I was a growing company, how do I implement this at the start so that I don't have to worry about it growing forward?
That's a great question, Cody. And that's exactly when you should start focusing on this conversation, is at the beginning. The underlying problem is that we all live with bias, and we live somewhat mindlessly. We live in this mindless state because our brains make decisions for us in split seconds so that we can save energy and keep ourselves safe. That's how it works. The problem is all of the influences around us have us changing our behavior, may be biased in favor of or against a particular person. So thinking about how inclusive your organization is from the beginning is really critical. Thinking about who you're hiring. What does the complexion in every sense look like? And I'm not talking just about race and ethnicity or gender or sexuality. I'm also talking about politics and skill sets and geographics and so many aspects. Making sure that you're creating that environment where everyone can contribute and bring aspects of who they are to the workplace. You don't come to work and leave something at the door. You want to be in a workplace where not only do you not hear offensive, discriminatory comments in the hallways or worse from your boss, but be in a place where you can talk about what you did on Easter and what Easter means to you. And that's ultimately what you should be focusing on, avoiding that bias, the buzzing in your head that says, oh, that person's not going to be a good fit. It's about respect. Ultimately, this all comes down to respect. I don't care if people agree with my being gay. It's not changing anything. You don't have to agree. What I care about is that you show me the respect and decency that you would show to a random stranger on the street. And figure out why you think that. And then make sure you're working against that.
I get lucky because a lot of my hiring comes online, so a lot of it is faceless immediately. So I'm going based off of merit, especially with my editors. I had them do a test trial to see what they could do. I didn't know who they were.
Great.
They're amazing editors. I love them. My brain of my operations is in Discord, and I have a channel called Fuck You, Cody. So if I say anything wrong or if I do anything too much, and they could just yell at me. That is a channel for them to yell at me because I'm missing something or I don't understand their point. I want to build a company like my grandfather had, which is every employee has the advantage to talk to the CEO and get their frustrations off, even if it's at the CEO. Let's talk it out. Let's not have this as a hurdle. Let's just figure out what went wrong and fix it from there.
Well, and you raise a good point. And I think a sign of a really amazing leader is someone who accepts that they don't know everything. We as leaders, and I'm a former CEO myself, we convince ourselves that we are expected to know everything. And that's bullshit. We can't know everything. So the sign of a good leader is someone who says, I don't know everything. And I have to rely on other people who know so much more than I do. I have the big picture. That's my job. But when I was running my former organization, I needed people that had amazing skill sets. And I kind of brought all the pieces together and hopefully made the right decisions. But sometimes I didn't. Mm-hmm. And that's the job of a good CEO. And that's the job of an inclusive CEO.
It's weird how we went from that kind of framework. We had that framework before. When I went into the government, I gave my all. I wanted to change things and do things. And I'm like, nothing's going to move here because the structure's already in place. They don't want to change. So I'm starting out on my own and I want to build people up. My friend, who is a transgendered man, he just had his post-op surgery done. I love him. He is the most kind-hearted man I've ever met. He got into a little spat with me because of what I was talking about on my channel. He wouldn't express with me what the problem was in a respectful manner. I asked, where are you coming from? And then it became a spiel of things. And I don't disrespect him for anything he's done. I completely understand his side of things. But like, just to have that common ground and just say, hey, can we have a discussion? Like a proper discussion.
Yeah. I think in those moments, the best thing you can do as both parties is just to step back and take a breath.
Yeah.
Give yourself a moment or 5 or 10 or an hour or a day and not try to force the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, as a queer person, as a person who lives with a disability, I feel like we, from so-called underrepresented or marginalized groups, and I don't love those terms, have a responsibility to be part of the education. And sometimes people from within our communities feel like we shouldn't. You know, we've gone through our shit, so now it's your turn to do your own education and you should just know. And when I first came out, back before Confederation, I came out to my parents in 1989. And by the time I came out to my parents, I had been out to myself for a few years. I just wanted them to instantly get it and be the supportive parents that they had always been. And they didn't. And it was a struggle. And I got really angry at them for a long time. And I, years later, realized that they were on their learning journey and I was miles ahead of them. My responsibility was to stop and help them catch up. Okay, not everybody is where I am. Not everybody's going to understand. So I'll help you understand. And I love creating spaces where people can ask questions and can say, you know what? I don't know how to use pronouns. You know, I think we just have a responsibility to create the space to help people learn and not get upset with them.
But to go back to the pronouns, call me whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. Just don't call me Shirley.
I put my pronouns out there and use them not because I'm worried about being misgendered, but because I want to make sure that others understand that they can talk about their pronouns and their gender, and I'm going to respect it because I want to create that inclusive environment where everyone can be themselves around me and they don't have to worry about anything.
Didn't think about it that way. I've experimented. I've done all that. Like, I think I ended up on demi-asexual. So, like, finding that journey, discovering who I am, and then trying to teach people about it was very hard, especially back in the early days when you didn't have the technology teaching you all these things and the people out there talking about it. Can you provide an example of a small cultural change that everybody can do in their day-to-day lives that can give people a little bit more perspective?
I just want to give you props for going through that journey. I had a conversation just Sunday with somebody because he identifies as bisexual. His boyfriend has real problems with it. We're not the most accepting group.
Yeah.
To come back to your question, though, about one thing, I know that pronouns may seem like sort of insignificant. What I would say is I turned to a piece of research from Transpulse Canada, fabulous organization. They do some great research. And they found that 50% of the people in a study who identified as non-binary, so people who do not identify as man or woman, every single day they're misgendered. And the impact is mental health issues, depression, anxiety, which leads to lower engagement, lower productivity, higher voluntary turnover, lower creativity, lower innovation. So by just the simple act of not using the correct pronouns, you can have an incredibly negative effect on an individual and on your organization. It is the simplest thing to put your pronouns into your email signature, into your Zoom profile or Facebook or LinkedIn, to introduce yourself using your pronouns at the beginning of a meeting. But the impact of that on inclusion is the ripple effect. It's that butterfly effect, and it's significant and very, very impactful.
Those are very wise words. I'll give you the last 3 minutes to plug whatever you want or tell people where to find you, and we'll go from there.
So here's what I'd say. My final thoughts. This is an interesting time around the conversations of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility with some real pushback from the ideological right. I'm not going to say political or religious. It's an ideology. Don't shy away from being more inclusive, from doing that good work in your day-to-day lives. Individual actions are what make organizations inclusive. There's actually very little that employers can do to make an inclusive environment. It falls to the individuals. And it's through individual actions like having a conversation with somebody, going to lunch with somebody who you don't know. Making people feel included involves individual actions, and I would encourage everyone to do that. People can find me all over the interwebs. My website is michaelbach.com, and I am at the Michael Bach on all of the social media platforms. You can check me out and connect with me there.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.